I had 72 hours before the custody hearing and my daughter became someone else's child. My hand shook just enough to smear the ink on the legal pad as I circled the lab name for the 15th time. The DNA test results felt thinner than tissue, like they might disintegrate if I admitted what they meant. Around me, Lily's bedroom hummed with a low frequency of absence, the silence where laughter used to be, the stillness where toys once scattered, the empty space where bedtime stories had filled the air. Outside, February rain hammered against the window. But in here, everything was still, too still, suffocating. I approached the dresser like I was walking toward my own execution. My wedding ring sat on the polished wood, rose gold catching the gray afternoon light. It looked like it had been waiting there forever. Small diamond, practical choice, the symbol of a life David and I had built when we were young and broke and certain about forever. Beside the ring, the framed photo from Lily's 6th birthday stared back at me. David's arms around our daughter, both of them laughing at something Mason had said. He looked like the perfect father. Sharp smile, dark hair, button-down shirt rolled to his elbows, the kind of casual elegance that came from his mother Patricia's side of the family. His hand rested on Lily's shoulder in that photo, protective and sure. That hand had packed suitcases 3 weeks ago while I begged him to listen. Across the room, through the doorway, I could see down the hallway to Mason's empty bedroom. His Spider-Man nightlight glowed uselessly in the afternoon dimness. David had taken him that same night, his face a mask of betrayal I'd never seen before. "I can't even look at you," he'd said. He looked like a man whose wife had destroyed everything. He wasn't. 3 weeks ago, I'd been handed test results that made my world implode. The medical records room at Riverside Fertility Clinic wasn't really a records room. It was a climate-controlled vault in the basement, all locked filing cabinets and fluorescent lighting that made everything look cold and clinical. I'd gone there on my lunch break. From the pediatric ward, still wearing my scrubs, still smelling like antiseptic and the strawberry hand sanitizer I used between patients. I'd needed my IVF records from 6 years ago. Needed to understand how this had happened. How a DNA test could say my husband wasn't my daughter's biological father when I'd never cheated, never even looked at another man, never given him a single reason to doubt me. The clerk had handed me the file with sympathetic eyes. She'd seen the news. Everyone had. Small suburban community, big scandal. The pediatric nurse whose perfect family was built on lies. I'd opened the file right there, standing under those merciless lights, and seen the discrepancies. Signatures that didn't match. Dates that didn't align. A notation in the margin that made my blood run cold, sample handling, verify with JP. Someone had altered my medical records. Someone had destroyed my family with science I couldn't fight. Now, standing in my daughter's bedroom with 72 hours until I lost her forever, I picked up my phone and dialed the number I'd found that morning. Forensic DNA Services, a voice answered, professional and distant. "How can I help you?" "I need to prove a test was wrong," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And I need to do it in 3 days. Because if I couldn't, Patricia Martinez would finally get what she'd wanted for 8 years. Her son back. Her grandson under her control. And the immigrant nurse's daughter who'd never been good enough for her family erased like a mistake that should never have happened." I found him at the kitchen table, which felt cosmically wrong given that David never got home before 7. It was 5:45 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I just finished a 12-hour shift in the pediatric ward. My scrubs still smelled like antiseptic and the grape popsicles we'd given to the kids in room 304. I'd been thinking about dinner, maybe pasta, maybe takeout, maybe just cereal because we were both too tired to care. David sat perfectly still, his laptop closed, his phone face down. An unmarked manila envelope lay on the table in front of him like an accusation. "You're home early," I said, setting my bag on the counter. "Everything okay?" He looked up, and I saw his face. Pale. Drawn. Eyes red like he'd been crying or hadn't slept or both. In 8 years of marriage, I'd seen David angry, frustrated, exhausted from work. I'd never seen him look destroyed. "We need to talk about Lily," he said, his voice flat. My heart stopped. "Is she okay? Did something happen at school?" "David, what?" "She's fine. She's at my mom's." He picked up the envelope with hands that trembled. "I got this today. Came to my office. No return address." I moved closer, dread pooling in my stomach. "What is it?" He slid a document across the table. Official letterhead. Gene Trust Solutions. Rows of numbers and percentages that took me 3 seconds to process and a lifetime to understand. Alleged father, David Martinez. Child, Lily Martinez. Probability of paternity, 0%. The world tilted. I grabbed the back of a chair, reading it again, certain I'd misunderstood. But the numbers didn't change. 0%. Excluded as biological father. "This has to be wrong," I heard myself say. "David, this is obviously a mistake. Some mix-up at the lab. I had it verified." His voice cracked. "Called them this afternoon. Sent them the samples myself 2 weeks ago. Hair from Lily's brush, my cheek swab. They confirmed. It's accurate. 2 weeks ago. He'd been testing our daughter's paternity for 2 weeks without telling me." "Why would you?" I couldn't finish. Couldn't breathe. "You think I cheated on you?" "When, Emma?" He stood up, and I saw the rage beneath the grief. "That's all I want to know. When did you do it? Before we got married? After? Was it someone from the hospital?" "I never cheated on you." The words came out desperate, pleading. "David, I swear to God, I have never been with anyone else. Not once. Not ever." "Then explain this." He slammed his hand on the table, making me flinch. "Explain how our 6-year-old daughter isn't biologically mine. Explain how 0% happens if you were faithful." "I don't know. But there has to be an explanation." "There is an explanation. You had an affair. You lied to me for 6 years. You let me raise another man's child." "No." I was crying now, reaching for him. "No, David, please. You know me. You know I would never." He stepped back like my touch burned. "I don't know anything anymore." He grabbed his keys from the counter. Grabbed the overnight bag I hadn't noticed by the door. "Where are you going?" "My mom's." "Mason's already there." His face hardened. "Mason is my son. I'm keeping him." The implication hit like a fist. Not our son. My son. David, please, just wait. But he was already gone, the door closing with the quiet finality of an ending I couldn't stop. I stood there in our kitchen, in the house we'd bought together, staring at the DNA test that had just destroyed my life. And I had absolutely no idea how to prove a truth I knew in my bones but couldn't explain with science. Patricia arrived 30 minutes later, because of course she did. I was still standing in the kitchen, staring at the DNA test, when I heard her Mercedes pull into the driveway. She had a key, had insisted on it when we bought the house, in case of emergencies. This apparently qualified. Emma, dear. She swept in wearing Chanel and concern in equal measure, her perfectly highlighted hair not moving despite the February wind. David called me. I came as soon as I could. I didn't turn around. He told you. He's devastated, as you can imagine. She set her purse on the counter with careful precision. I have the children at my house. They're confused, of course. Mason keeps asking why Daddy's so upset. This is a mistake, I said, finally looking at her. The test is wrong. It has to be. Patricia's smile was gentle, pitying. Sweetheart, I understand you're in denial. But DNA doesn't lie. I didn't cheat on him. Of course you didn't mean to hurt him. She moved closer, her voice dropping to that therapeutic tone she used when she wanted to sound compassionate. These things happen. You were young when you met David, probably overwhelmed. Your parents were still struggling with the language barrier. You were working 2 jobs to pay for nursing school. A young woman in that position, vulnerable, seeking comfort. Stop. My hands clenched into fists. I know what you're doing. I'm trying to help you accept reality, Emma. Running from it won't change what happened. She touched my shoulder, and I jerked away. David deserves the truth. When did it happen? Who was he? There was no one. I have never been unfaithful to your son. Then explain the test. I can't. But that doesn't mean. It means exactly what it says. Her sympathy evaporated like it had never existed. You trapped my son with a pregnancy 7 years ago. Mason came along suspiciously fast after the wedding, didn't he? 10 months. And now we discover Lily isn't even his. Tell me, Emma, were you ever going to tell him the truth? I didn't trap him. We wanted Mason. We planned. You planned to secure your place in a family that was better than the one you came from. Her voice turned cold. I always knew you weren't right for David. Too eager, too desperate to fit into a world you didn't belong in. But he was young and infatuated, and I thought maybe I was being unfair. I gave you a chance. How generous of you. Don't be smart. You've lost that privilege. She picked up her purse. David will be staying with me indefinitely. Both boys will be with us. I've already contacted our family attorney. You should probably do the same. The words hit like ice water. You're taking my children? David is taking his son. Mason. The child who's actually his. She headed for the door, then paused. As for Lily, well, that situation will need to be sorted legally. I imagine you'll want to contact the biological father. Whoever he is. She left me standing there, the implication hanging in the air like poison. My daughter didn't belong to this family anymore. The process server arrived at 7 the next morning. I answered the door in yesterday's clothes, having not slept. Emma Chen Martinez? He looked apologetic. I'm sorry to do this. The envelope was thick. Petition for divorce. Emergency custody motion. A declaration from David detailing evidence of infidelity and paternity fraud. A statement from Patricia about my unstable emotional state and inability to provide appropriate care. They'd already built their case while I was still trying to understand the crime I hadn't committed. I called David 17 times that day. He didn't answer once. I found Rebecca Stone through a forensic science forum at 2 in the morning, 3 days after David served me with papers. Her credentials were impressive: PhD in molecular biology, former expert witness in 50-plus paternity cases, specialized in challenging fraudulent DNA results. Her consultation fee made me wince, but I was past caring about money. I'd drain my savings account if it meant proving the truth. We met in her office downtown, a converted loft filled with case files and scientific journals. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Tell me everything, she said, pulling out a legal pad. I walked her through it: the anonymous envelope, David's reaction, Patricia's immediate involvement, the custody filing. I slid the DNA test across her desk like it might bite. Rebecca studied it for a long moment, her expression shifting from neutral to deeply skeptical. Gene Trust Solutions, she said finally. That's interesting. You know them? Unfortunately. She pulled up something on her laptop, turned the screen toward me. They've had 43 complaints filed with the state medical board in the last 5 years. Allegations of contaminated samples, chain of custody violations, results that don't hold up under independent verification. My heart started pounding. So the test could be wrong? The test could be a lot of things. Wrong. Contaminated. Deliberately falsified. She looked at me over her reading glasses. Who ordered this test? David said it came anonymously. To his office. Anonymously. Rebecca wrote something down. And who suggested he verify it? I thought back to that awful night. He said he called the lab himself. But his mother showed up so fast, the realization hit me like a truck. She knew. Before I did. She had to have known. Rebecca pulled up another screen. Gene Trust Solutions is owned by Marcus Chen. Any relation? Chen is my last name, but I stopped. Patricia's maiden name. Her brother. Oh my God. Marcus Chen is David's uncle. Patricia's brother. That's one hell of a conflict of interest. Rebecca leaned back, studying me. Emma, I need to ask you directly. Is there any possibility this test is accurate? Any chance? No. I met her eyes. I have never been unfaithful to my husband. Not once. Not ever. Lily was conceived through IVF at Riverside Fertility Clinic. If there's a question about paternity, it happened there, not in an affair I didn't have. IVF. Rebecca's eyes sharpened. Now we're getting somewhere. I need those medical records. Everything from conception through birth. I tried calling David that afternoon, armed with Rebecca's findings. He answered on the 6th ring, his voice clipped. "What do you want, Emma? The DNA test is from a corrupt lab. Gene Trust Solutions, they've been reported dozens of times. David, it's owned by your Uncle Marcus. Patricia's brother. Don't you think that's suspicious?" Silence. Then, "My mother warned me you'd do this." Do what? Grasp at conspiracy theories instead of accepting responsibility. She said you'd probably blame her next. His voice hardened. The lab sent verification. Independent confirmation. Multiple samples. It's accurate, Emma. Just admit what you did. I didn't do anything. David, please, just listen. I'm listening to science. Maybe you should try it. He hung up. I sat in my car outside Rebecca's office, staring at my phone, and realized Patricia had already won this round. She'd planted the seeds of doubt so deep that even evidence looked like desperation. But Rebecca had given me something more valuable than proof. She'd given me a direction to dig. And I was going to excavate every buried secret until I found the truth that would bring my family home. Riverside Fertility Clinic looked exactly as I remembered: soft gray walls, abstract art that probably cost more than my car, the hushed atmosphere of a place where hope and science intersected. 6 years ago, I'd walked through these doors desperate and optimistic. David and I had been trying for 2 years after Mason's birth. Month after month of negative tests, doctor's appointments, the growing fear that maybe one child was all we'd get. IVF had felt like our last chance. Now I walked through those same doors hunting for evidence that someone had weaponized my fertility against me. "I need to speak with Dr. Mitchell," I told the receptionist, a young woman who definitely hadn't been here 6 years ago. "It's about my IVF cycle from 2019. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's urgent." "Tell her it's Emma Martinez. She'll remember me." 20 minutes later, I sat in Dr. Sarah Mitchell's office, watching her flip through a file she'd pulled from storage. She looked older than I remembered, more tired, and when she met my eyes there was something there I couldn't quite name. Fear. "Mrs. Martinez," she said carefully. "I was sorry to hear about your situation. I saw the news coverage. Then you know why I'm here. I'm not sure I can help you. Patient privacy laws. I'm the patient. I'm requesting my own records." I leaned forward. "Dr. Mitchell, I need to understand what happened during my IVF cycle. Something went wrong. I need to know what." She set down the file, her hands trembling slightly. "The cycle was successful. You carried to term. Delivered a healthy baby girl. Who isn't biologically my husband's child, according to a DNA test. That's impossible. We verified all samples. Chain of custody protocols. Were they followed?" I watched her face. "Every single one? Every time?" The pause was infinitesimal, but I caught it. "Of course. Then you won't mind if I get a copy of my complete medical records." "Everything. Lab notes, sample handling logs, the works. I'll have to check with our legal department. I'll get a subpoena if I need to." My voice came out harder than intended. My marriage is destroyed. My children are gone. Someone did this to me, and the trail leads right back to this clinic. Dr. Mitchell's composure cracked. Emma, there are things I can't discuss without legal protection. But if you're asking whether protocols were always followed. She glanced at the closed door. Get a subpoena. Make it official. Then I can tell you everything. She sent me home with a medical records request form and a promise of 48 hours. The file arrived by courier the next morning. I spread everything across my dining room table: consent forms, lab reports, sample tracking sheets, procedure notes. Rebecca joined me, her trained eye scanning for inconsistencies I might miss. Here. She pointed to a signature on my consent form, dated May 15, 2019. This says you consented to sample storage protocols. I remember signing that. Look at the signature on the procedure report from May 18, same form, supposedly same day you came in for egg retrieval. I looked. The signatures were similar but not identical. The loops on the E were different. The slant was off. That's not my signature, I said slowly. Rebecca pulled out more documents. None of these match. Someone altered your records, Emma. Forged your signature on multiple documents. She held up a lab processing form. And look at this, the dates don't align. According to this, your embryo transfer happened on June 3rd. But this report says June 5th. Which one is accurate? That's what we need to find out. She photographed every page. Because if someone was changing dates, they might have been changing more than paperwork. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: stop digging. You don't want to know what you'll find. I showed Rebecca. Her face hardened. Somebody's scared, she said. Good. Scared people make mistakes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Dr. Mitchell's face, about the fear in her eyes, about altered signatures and mismatched dates. Someone had been in my medical records. Someone had changed my history. And they were threatening me to keep me from finding out why. Rebecca called me at 6 in the morning, 4 days into my investigation. I found them, she said without preamble. 3 other families. Same clinic, same pattern, same lab. I was already pulling on clothes. I'm coming to your office. The files were spread across her conference table when I arrived: case summaries, DNA tests, divorce filings. Rebecca had been up all night, and it showed. Meet the Johnsons, she said, sliding a folder toward me. IVF at Riverside in 2017. Twin boys. Husband filed for divorce last year after receiving anonymous DNA results. Gene Trust Solutions. 0% paternity match on both children. My stomach dropped. Both? Both. She pulled out another file. The Parkers. IVF at Riverside in 2018. Daughter, age 5. Same story. Anonymous test results, gene trust processing, marriage destroyed. And then twins, IVF in 2020, son now age 3. Husband left 6 months ago. Jesus. I stared at the photos of smiling families that no longer existed. Did any of them fight it? Mrs. Johnson tried. Got an independent test done. Guess what? Her ex-husband was the biological father. The gene trust test was completely fabricated. So why isn't gene trust shut down? Because Mrs. Johnson couldn't prove deliberate fraud. The lab claimed contamination, paid a settlement, kept operating. The case never went public. Rebecca pulled up her laptop. But here's where it gets interesting. I started looking at what these families have in common besides the clinic. She turned the screen toward me. Social media profiles, news articles, public records. Michelle Johnson, corporate attorney, was prosecuting a major fraud case against a pharmaceutical company. Sarah Parker, investigative journalist, was working on exposé about medical device manufacturers. Linda Nguyen, city councilwoman, leading a campaign against a development project. Rebecca looked at me. Emma, these weren't random victims. These were women who someone wanted silenced. By destroying their families. By destroying their credibility. Hard to maintain a career when you're fighting custody battles and labeled as an adulterer. She pulled out my file. So I looked at you. Pediatric nurse, no high-profile cases, no enemies I could find. But your mother-in-law. Patricia. The name came out like poison. Patricia Martinez, Nachin. Sits on the board of 3 hospitals, including Riverside Fertility's parent company. Has significant financial interest in several medical ventures. And Rebecca pulled out another document. Her brother Marcus owns Gene Trust Solutions. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. She did this to all of us. Or someone in her network did. Emma, this isn't just about you. This is a pattern of weaponized science targeting women who threatened someone's interests or simply weren't wanted. Rebecca's eyes blazed. They're using fake DNA tests to destroy families, discredit mothers, and face zero consequences. I thought about Michelle Johnson's twins, Sarah Parker's 5-year-old, Lyndon Wen's toddler. Children who'd lost their fathers because of manufactured lies. We need to talk to them, I said. The other mothers. I already reached out. They want to meet. We gathered that afternoon in Rebecca's conference room, for women who'd never met but shared the same nightmare. Michelle Johnson still wore her wedding ring despite the divorce being final. Sarah Parker looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in months. Linda Nguyen held her phone, showing us pictures of her son she wasn't allowed to see. They took everything, Michelle said quietly. My marriage, my credibility, my children's trust in me. And everyone believed the science because science doesn't lie. Except it did, Sarah added. And when I tried to investigate, tried to expose what happened, suddenly I was the crazy ex-wife grasping at conspiracy theories. My ex won't even let me explain, Linda said. He believes I cheated. His family believes it. My son is growing up thinking his mother is a liar. I looked at these women, accomplished, strong, destroyed by a piece of paper that was designed to look infallible. We can't let them keep doing this, I said. Rebecca nodded. Then we take them down. All of them. But we need irrefutable proof. I know where to find it, I said, thinking of Dr. Mitchell's fear, of altered records, of 6 years of secrets buried in a fertility clinic's basement. The clinic's storage facility. The original samples. If they're still there. That's breaking and entering, Michelle interrupted. I know. You could be arrested. I know that too. I met her eyes. But my custody hearing is in 48 hours. If I don't prove this now, I lose my daughter forever. And Patricia wins. Sarah leaned forward. Then let's make sure she doesn't. I found Patricia at her country club, having lunch on the terrace with 3 other women whose jewelry could have funded a small nation. Emma. She looked up from her salad, surprise flickering across her face before her perfect composure returned. This is unexpected. Ladies, would you excuse us? Her friends departed with sympathetic glances in Patricia's direction. Poor woman, dealing with her son's unfaithful wife. I waited until they were gone, then dropped the folder on her white tablecloth. Gene Trust Solutions, I said. Your brother's lab. The one that's been falsifying DNA tests for years. Patricia dabbed her mouth with a napkin, unhurried. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I found 3 other families. Same fertility clinic, same fake test results, same destroyed marriages. All processed by Marcus's lab. I pulled out the documentation. Michelle Johnson, Sarah Parker, Lyndon Gwynn. Women who were targeted, discredited, erased from their children's lives using fraudulent science. She glanced at the papers without touching them. That's quite a conspiracy theory you've constructed. It's not a theory. I have evidence. Falsified records, contaminated samples, a pattern of corruption. You have the desperate accusations of a woman facing consequences for her actions. Patricia's voice remained calm, almost gentle. Emma, dear, I understand what you're going through. Denial is a natural response to shame. But manufacturing these elaborate stories won't change biology. The biology is a lie. Is it? She leaned back, studying me with something that looked disturbingly like pity. Or are you so unable to face what you've done that you'd rather believe in vast conspiracies than admit you made a mistake? I didn't make a mistake. You did. You orchestrated this entire thing because you never wanted me in your family. My voice rose despite my attempt to stay controlled. I was never good enough for David. Never wealthy enough, never connected enough. My parents were immigrants. I worked my way through nursing school. I didn't fit your vision of who he should marry. That's not true. But something flickered in her eyes. I gave you every chance. You tolerated me. And when that wasn't enough control, you decided to remove me entirely. You used your brother's lab to falsify a DNA test, planted it anonymously so David would think I cheated, and now you're taking my children. Patricia set down her napkin, her mask finally cracking. You have no proof of any of this. I have plenty of proof. And I'm going to present it at the custody hearing. Are you? She picked up her phone, typed something. Because I have proof of my own. Proof that you've been harassing medical professionals, breaking into records, stalking other families, constructing paranoid fantasies about people trying to destroy you. A man in an expensive suit appeared at the terrace entrance. Patricia waved him over. Emma, this is James Whitmore, our family attorney. James, would you please show Mrs. Martinez the documents we discussed? Whitmore opened his briefcase, pulled out a manila folder. Mrs. Martinez, I'm serving you with a petition for emergency psychiatric evaluation. Based on documented evidence of paranoid delusions, harassment of medical staff at Riverside Fertility Clinic, and unstable behavior that poses a risk to minor children. The words blurred on the page. Psychiatric evaluation. Paranoid delusions. Unfit mother. "You can't do this," I whispered. "I can and I am," Patricia said, her voice soft as steel. "Because I'm protecting my grandsons from a woman who's clearly having a mental breakdown." "You're not well, Emma. These conspiracy theories, this harassment, this refusal to accept reality, it's concerning. Deeply concerning. I'm not crazy. No one said you were. But you need help. Professional help." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "The hearing is tomorrow. I've already spoken with the judge about my concerns for the children's welfare. David agrees that supervised visitation is appropriate until you've received treatment." David agreed to this? David wants what's best for his son. And for Lily, despite everything. Her expression softened into something that looked almost like compassion. It was worse than her coldness. "Emma, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help you face the truth. You had an affair. You got pregnant. You passed another man's child off as David's for 6 years. Now you're spiraling, unable to cope with the consequences. Get help. Accept responsibility. Maybe someday you can rebuild a relationship with your children." She walked away, leaving me standing on the terrace with a psychiatric evaluation order and the wreckage of my last desperate play. I'd confronted her with evidence. She'd countered by declaring me insane. And in 48 hours, a judge would decide if she was right. I sat in my car across from David's apartment building for 2 hours, engine off, watching the lit windows on the 4th floor. 48 hours until the custody hearing. 3 weeks since I'd seen my children. Through the window, I could see shadows moving. David's silhouette, tall and familiar. A smaller shape, Mason, 7 years old, doing homework at the kitchen table probably. And Lily, my baby, 6 years old, who must be wondering why mommy disappeared. My phone showed 17 missed calls to Mason's cell, none returned. David had clearly told him not to answer. Or maybe Mason didn't want to talk to the mother who destroyed their family. 7 years old, and he already knew his mother was a cheater. A liar. Someone who couldn't be trusted. The psychiatric evaluation order sat on my passenger seat. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., I was supposed to report for assessment. Patricia's lawyer had been very clear. Failure to comply would be viewed as further evidence of instability. I was trapped. If I went, they'd twist everything I said into proof of delusion. If I didn't go, they'd cite my refusal as evidence I was unfit. Either way, I lost. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Any luck with Mitchell?" I hadn't heard from Dr. Mitchell since our meeting at the clinic. My follow-up calls went to voicemail. The woman was terrified of something, and I couldn't blame her. Look what happened to people who crossed Patricia Martinez. I typed back, "Nothing. We're out of time." Rebecca's response came immediately, "Don't give up. We still have the other families. We can present the pattern." But patterns weren't proof. Theories weren't evidence. And Patricia had already painted me as a paranoid conspiracy theorist manufacturing elaborate lies to avoid responsibility. Who would a judge believe, a respected hospital board member with impeccable connections, or a desperate nurse clinging to wild accusations? The light in David's apartment went out. Bedtime. Mason and Lily would be brushing teeth, putting on pajamas. David would read them stories, tuck them in, kiss them goodnight. All the rituals I'd done for years, now happening without me. Lily had asked him when Mommy was coming home. Rebecca had heard it from her investigator, who'd heard it from someone at Patricia's house. My 6-year-old daughter, wondering why her mother had abandoned her. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and let myself break. 3 weeks of holding it together, investigating, fighting, and I had nothing. Patricia was too powerful. Too connected. She'd covered her tracks perfectly, and now she was taking my children while painting me as unstable. Maybe I was unstable. Maybe sitting in a car at 10 p.m. stalking my own family was exactly the kind of thing that proved her right. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mrs. Martinez? A woman's voice, shaking. This is Dr. Sarah Mitchell. I need to meet with you. Tonight. There are things I need to tell you about what really happened. I sat up, heart pounding. Dr. Mitchell, are you okay? No. I'm not. I haven't been okay for 6 years. She took a breath that sounded like a sob. Can you meet me at the clinic? The back entrance. Midnight. Come alone. Why alone? Because if anyone sees us together, they'll know I talked. And Emma, her voice dropped to a whisper. They're watching. Patricia's people. They've been watching since you started asking questions. If they find out I'm helping you, I'll lose everything. Who's watching? Everyone. The clinic administration, the board, people I thought were colleagues. Patricia Martinez owns this city, and I was stupid enough to think I could work for her and keep my conscience. Another shaky breath. Midnight. Back entrance. I'll bring everything, the real records, the original samples, proof of what they did to you and the others. But after this, I'm disappearing. I can't live with this anymore. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, then at David's darkened apartment window. Dr. Mitchell was finally ready to talk. And I had exactly 48 hours to turn her testimony into the proof that would save my family. I started the engine and drove toward the one place that held all the answers. The fertility clinic where my nightmare had begun 6 years ago. Dr. Mitchell was waiting at the clinic's back entrance, looking 10 years older than she had a week ago. You came alone? She asked, eyes darting to the parking lot. Rebecca's meeting us after. What do you have? She pulled me inside, locked the door behind us. The clinic was dark except for emergency lighting, casting everything in eerie red. We moved through hallways I'd walked 6 years ago, hopeful and terrified, not knowing I was walking into a trap. James Park, Dr. Mitchell said, leading me to her office. He was our senior lab technician. Handled all the IVF sample processing. She pulled out a file, hands shaking. Patricia approached him in 2019. Offered him $50,000 to manipulate your samples. The room tilted. Manipulate how? Your embryo transfer, they used the wrong sample. Not David's. They switched it deliberately, then falsified all the chain of custody documentation to cover it up. She opened the file, showing me lab reports I'd never seen. James documented everything as insurance. He knew what he was doing was criminal. He wanted leverage. Where is he now? Gone. Patricia paid him another $100,000 last month to disappear after you started investigating. But he left copies of everything with me before he ran. She pulled out a thumb drive. Original lab reports, emails between Patricia and Marcus discussing the Emma problem, documentation of the sample switch, proof that the DNA test Marcus ran last month was falsified using contaminated samples. I stared at the thumb drive like it was a live grenade. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because I was terrified. Tears streamed down her face. Patricia owns the hospital group. She controls my career, my license, everything. But I can't do this anymore. I can't watch more families destroyed because I was too cowardly to tell the truth. My phone buzzed. Rebecca, I found something. Gene Trust has an off-site storage facility. If the original samples still exist, they're there. I showed Dr. Mitchell. Can we get in? Not legally. I didn't ask if it was legal. 20 minutes later, Rebecca and I stood outside a nondescript warehouse in an industrial park, bolt cutters in hand. Dr. Mitchell had given us the security codes, the layout, everything we needed. This is breaking and entering, Rebecca said. I know. We could be arrested. I know that too. I checked my phone. 12 hours until the custody hearing. But if we don't do this, Patricia wins. And I lose my daughter forever. Rebecca cut the lock. The storage facility was climate-controlled, rows of metal shelving holding labeled boxes. We found Gene Trust's section in the back, years of samples, supposedly destroyed but kept as insurance against liability claims. Here. Rebecca pulled down a box labeled 2019 IVF Riverside. Inside were vials, each with patient codes. She found mine in minutes. Emma Chen Martinez. Sample collected May 2019. There were 2 vials. One labeled with David's patient code. Another labeled with a code I didn't recognize. They kept both, I breathed. The real sample and the switched one. We kept searching, finding boxes of falsified chain of custody forms, emails printed and filed, evidence of dozens of manipulated tests. Rebecca photographed everything, her camera flash illuminating years of fraud. Then we found the smoking gun, a folder labeled Martinez contract. Inside were emails between Patricia and Marcus, dated from April 2019. The Emma problem needs to be handled before she gets too comfortable in the family. P. IVF provides the perfect opportunity. Untraceable, defensible as medical error. M. How much for James to cooperate? P. $50,000. He'll do it. Everyone has a price. M. I photographed every page with shaking hands. This was it. Proof of conspiracy, proof of intent, proof that Patricia had orchestrated my destruction before Lily was even conceived. We need to go, Rebecca whispered. We've been here too long. We were repacking the boxes when the lights blazed on. Freeze. Security. Hands where we can see them. 2 guards, one already on his phone calling the police. Rebecca grabbed my arm. Run. No. I held up my phone, showing the photos. I got what I came for. The police arrived 8 minutes later. I was handcuffed in the back of a squad car by 2:15 a.m. Breaking and entering. Criminal trespass. Theft of property. My custody hearing was in less than 10 hours.
These records
and
will
I was
prove...
going to jail. I spent Valentine's Day morning in a holding
These
cell,
records
still wearing
will
yesterday's
prove...
clothes, watching the clock tick toward 9 a.m.
These
The
records
custody
will
hearing.
prove...
The moment that would decide whether I kept my children or lost
These
them
records
forever.
will prove...
And I was sitting in jail, arrested for breaking into the facility that held proof of my innocence. Martinez, a guard called at 8:15. Your lawyer's here. Rebecca appeared at the cell bars, looking exhausted and furious. I've got the evidence. All of it. The photos uploaded to the cloud before they took our phones. Dr. Mitchell is testifying. We're ready. I'm in jail, Rebecca. The judge agreed to a video appearance for the hearing. But Emma, she hesitated. Patricia's lawyer is arguing that breaking into Gene Trust proves you're unstable. They're using your arrest as evidence you're unfit. Of course they were. Even my proof was being twisted into Patricia's narrative. Then we make sure the evidence speaks louder than the arrest. At 9 a.m., I appeared via video link in Judge Catherine Morrison's courtroom. Through the screen, I could see David sitting with his lawyer, Patricia beside him in Chanel armor. My children weren't present, too young to testify, thank God. Rebecca stood before the judge with her laptop, a woman on a mission. Your Honor, I have evidence that the DNA test used to initiate these proceedings was deliberately falsified as part of a conspiracy to destroy my client's family and gain custody of her children. Patricia's lawyer stood immediately. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of paranoid delusion we've documented. I have emails, Rebecca interrupted, pulling up the photographs. Between Patricia Martinez and her brother Marcus Chin, owner of Gene Trust Solutions, discussing plans to handle the Emma problem by manipulating IVF samples. I have documentation of payment to the lab technician who performed the switch. I have the original samples, still in storage, that were never tested. And I have testimony from Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the reproductive endocrinologist who witnessed the entire conspiracy. The courtroom went silent. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Show me. For the next 30 minutes, Rebecca presented everything. The emails plotting my destruction. The falsified chain of custody documents. Dr. Mitchell's testimony about the sample switch. The pattern of other families destroyed by the same lab. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, irrefutable. David's face went from skepticism to horror to something I couldn't name. Patricia sat frozen, her perfect composure finally cracking. Your Honor, Rebecca concluded, I'm requesting an emergency DNA test, processed by an independent lab with both parents present, to prove that Lily Martinez is biologically David Martinez's daughter. Judge Morrison's expression was granite. Granted. Mr. Martinez, Mrs. Martinez, you'll report to the county medical examiner's office immediately for sample collection. Results will be expedited. She turned to Patricia's lawyer. And someone call the police. I want Marcus Chen's lab secured as a crime scene. The independent test took 4 hours. I was released from custody at 11 a.m., just in time to arrive at the medical examiner's office where David stood in the hallway, looking like a man whose entire world had shattered. "Emma," he started. "Not now." I walked past him into the testing room. The technician swabbed my cheek, then Lily's, my baby girl, who looked at me with wide, confused eyes and asked, "Mommy, why are you sad?" "I'm not sad anymore, sweetheart," I whispered, holding her close. "I promise." The results came back at 3 p.m. Alleged father, David Martinez. Child, Lily Martinez. Probability of paternity, 99.97%. Judge Morrison read them aloud in her courtroom, her voice sharp with controlled fury. The original DNA test was fraudulent. Mr. Chen's laboratory is being raided as we speak. Mrs. Patricia Martinez, you're being charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false reports, and child endangerment. Patricia stood as 2 officers approached. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small. "I was protecting my family," she said, voice shaking. "You destroyed one," Judge Morrison replied. "Bailiff, take her into custody." I watched Patricia being led away in handcuffs, and felt nothing. No triumph. No vindication. Just exhaustion and the hollow ache of 3 weeks without my children. David found me in the courthouse hallway an hour later. I was sitting on a bench, holding the real DNA test, staring at the numbers that had always been true. "I should have believed you," he said, sitting beside me but not touching. "Yes. You should have. Emma, his voice cracked. "I don't know how to apologize for this. For what I did. For what I let her do." I looked at him, this man I'd loved for 8 years, who'd believed I cheated on him based on a piece of paper. Who'd taken our son and left me alone in our house. Who'd let his mother orchestrate my destruction because some part of him had always wondered if I was good enough for his family. "Your mother spent 8 years teaching you I wasn't trustworthy," I said finally. "That I'd trapped you with Mason. That I came from the wrong background, the wrong family. She planted those seeds so deep that when she gave you proof I'd betrayed you, you believed it immediately." I held up the real test results. Maybe we both believed her. Maybe I spent 8 years trying to prove I deserved to be in your family instead of knowing I already did. He stared at his hands. "What do we do now?" "I don't know." We sat in silence, the truth between us like a bridge over a chasm neither of us knew how to cross. 3 weeks later, we sat in Dr. Helen Park's office for our first family therapy session. Mason on one side of the couch, Lily on the other, David and I in the middle with careful space between us. "Are we a family again?" Lily asked, her 6-year-old voice cutting through all the adult complexity. I looked at David, saw him trying. Saw the guilt and grief and desperate hope in his eyes. Saw myself in the same mirror, trying, hurting, hoping. "We're learning how to be," I said carefully. "Being a family is something you have to choose every day. And right now, Daddy and I are learning how to choose it again." "Does that mean you're not getting divorced?" Dr. Park smiled gently. "That's what we're all here to figure out together. One session at a time." That evening, I stood in Lily's bedroom, unpacking the stuffed animals I'd packed 3 weeks ago when I thought I might never see this room again. Mason was in his room doing homework. David was downstairs cooking dinner, a careful return to domestic rituals that felt both familiar and strange. On my dresser, I'd placed two things. The fake DNA test, with a red X marked through it, headed for the trash. And the real test, framed beside a photo of Lily and me from last Christmas. Probability of paternity, 99.97%. Not because I needed to prove anything to anyone. Not because science had validated what I'd always known. But because I wanted to remember, truth can be manipulated, evidence can be fabricated, and the people who promise to love you can doubt you when it matters most. But a mother's knowledge of her own truth? That's unshakable. I heard Lily's laugh from downstairs, bright and whole. Heard Mason call out, "Mom. Dinner's ready. Mom." He'd started calling me that again yesterday. I walked downstairs to my family, broken, healing, uncertain, and for the first time since that awful evening 3 weeks ago, I felt like I was home. Whether David and I would make it, I didn't know. We had months of therapy ahead, years of rebuilding trust, a marriage that had been shattered and might never look the same. But I knew this, I was enough. With or without his belief. With or without his validation. I'd fought for my truth. I'd won it back. And that truth was mine to keep, regardless of who chose to believe it. The rest? We'd figure out one day at a time.
Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed this story, you're going to love what's coming next. It's wilder, deeper, and full of twists you won't see coming. So go ahead, like the video, drop a comment and hit subscribe. Get ready, because the next story is about to blow your mind.